human being could become a Wendigo by his or her own excesses. That was the usual way. But one human being could also transform another into a Wendigo. One man asked another man and wife for the hand in their daughter in marriage. The father refused, pointing out that the petitioner had already had several wives, more wives than most men, and should not take yet another, lest one of his wives be neglected. The father suggested that the man should think of other men who did not yet have wives. The man took the refusal as an insult, as insulting as a slap in the face in public. He did not say anything to the father, but he was cut to the quick. As soon as he got home, he made an effigy of the girl with snow, and then immersed it in water before setting it outside in the cold, where it was frozen solid. Afterwards, he buried the effigy in ashes, performing a ritual and chanting arcane psalms as he did so. Around the same time, while the girl and her family were camped on the trap line, some distance away from the main village, she complained of being cold, although she did not have a fever and was not shivering. She was cold within and without. It was more than a physical cold that chilled the flesh. This cold chilled the blood, the spirit, and the soul as well. It was a chill that numbed her entire being and made her unbelievably hungry. Which was strange because she and her family had just eaten a short time earlier. The family made her a hot broth and a hot meal and wrapped her in blankets. But the girl didn't even touch the food, complaining that the smell alone made her ill, and that the extra blankets and heat added to her discomfort. She was hungry and wanted food, but not the kind that she had been accustomed to eating. Something different. At last, unable to stand her hunger, she turned on her own family, and with great strength born of desperation, overcame and bludgeoned her family, and then ate them. When the family was overdue to return to the village by several days, the suitor sorcerer volunteered to go in search of them. He found what he had hoped to find, as the creator of the new girl and her rescuer customed allowed that he could claim the girl as his wife if he wanted to. The girl was in a daze, unable to recall what had become of her family, of whom, other than the few possessions, there was no trace. But her hunger had subsided, and she went meekly with her rescuer. Her introduction into the family, not only as one of the wives, but as the favorite, caused a great deal of friction and unhappiness in the household than already existed. The other women resented the girl and wouldn't talk to her, but they talked about her survival while her family had died. The only one who seemed to be happy with the arrangement was the sorcerer, certain that the women in the household would eventually come to terms with the situation and that their lives would become stabilized. But the relationships in the household did not warm up as the sorcerer had hoped, and he blamed his newest wife for not making enough of an effort to fit in. The accusation only made matters worse, hurting the girl even more than she was already hurting, and intensifying her loneliness and sense of isolation, even in the company of people. The other women had families to visit and talk with, but she had none, not even the remembrance of a single one. She had only this vague sense that there was a family, that she must have had someone to love, and someone to love her in return. She longed for affection and to care for someone, to belong some place where she wanted to be. Every chance she had, whenever they were alone, she asked her husband who she was, where she came from, and whether she had kin. But all he would tell her was that he had come upon her in the woods, and that she was probably abandoned. Finally, she overcame her fear and asked one of the other women in the sorcerer's household if the woman knew who she was, or if she knew how she might find out. The other woman didn't know what to make of such a question. Don't know if the younger woman was putting her on or actually had lost her senses. She retorted sarcastically, "Why ask me? Why don't you ask him? What's the matter with you? Don't you know that he'd do anything for you?" The other woman hissed, "Ask him." The younger woman persisted, explaining that she had already asked and he had not received any satisfying answer. Now she pleaded for help. But the older woman remained adamant. "Ask him again," she barked, intimidating in her tone that their husband knew more about her than he let on. Following the older woman's advice, the younger woman badgered their husband to tell her what she wanted to know. She asked him several times a day until her questions drove him to such exasperation that he had told her that she had murdered and eaten her own family. He said he had kept this fact from her to save her from the guilt, and that if it wasn't for his care and protection, other Wendigos and Montanos would have killed her by now. The girl was horrified, but she didn't believe the sorcerer's story. She went to the oldest woman in the household and told her what their husband had said. The older woman explained that someone had indeed killed her family, and that the people suspected she had done it. People were afraid of her. The younger woman went into a depression. She had killed the people who had loved her and whom she loved. She no longer had anything, no memories, no hopes, nothing but guilt and remorse, loneliness and self-revulsion. Then an awful hunger settled on her, making her feel as if she had not eaten in several days, and that if she did not eat, she would collapse and die that night. And as the hunger mounted, she forgot everything else. There was nothing else, only hunger. She thought of food, meat, but such thoughts made her nauseous. She wanted nourishment, not ordinary food, but human flesh. Along with the hunger, she was enveloped by the chill akin to one brought on by fear and the onslaught of a sickness. As it settled in, the cold went deep into her soul and spirit, hard and brittle as flint. She had to get warm or else turn into ice and die. She bundled up and gathered wood with which she made a fire and then continued to cast the firewood into the blaze until it was an inferno. She stood near the blaze, but it didn't do her any good, and her hunger grew sharper. Finally, she hurled herself into the flames. Those present were horrified. They screamed. They tried to remove her body from the flames, but the heat drove them back, and they were driven away from the crematorium by the sight and stench of death. There was no outcry from the girl, as she was consumed by the fire. Only a hiss and vapor of steam issuing from her body as it was transformed into carbon black. In the morning, when the sorcerer and his wives sift through the cold ashes in search of the girl's remains so they could give her a proper funeral, they uncovered a figurine of a woman in ice, and next to the figurine was an infant, the unborn child that she had been carrying. In the end, the girl had her revenge. Hey everyone, I hope you enjoyed this spooky story about revenge and monster creations. And of course, as I said in the previous videos, I'm definitely going to be a little bit more on top of making more, and definitely not just going to be gone months at a time and all that kind of stuff. But I hopefully, you enjoyed this video, and if you do, please like, subscribe, and wait for the next video. Hopefully, it won't take too long. But yeah, anyway, hope you guys have a great day. Bye-bye.